Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lodge Podcast. I am your host, Scott Milley, and we are back today with episode 15. I am so excited to announce today's uniquely talented guest, Darnell Lisius Disset. Darnell, how you doing today?
I'm good, Scott. Glad to be on the show. Heard a lot of good things of the podcast, watched a few episodes, and I'm really excited to be part of something that's covering the Ontario gaming scene. Looking forward to it.
I appreciate that. We've been wanting to have you on for a while, and I'm glad we could finally make it happen. So, Darnell is a very accomplished animator, a wildly talented character artist. Check out his Instagram, it's ridiculous. And the owner and creative director of Toronto's very own Ocean Mouse Studios. With over a decade of experience to pull from, today we're going to be talking about running your own studio, coming up in animation, working here in Ontario, and much, much more. So, without further ado, let's get into the conversation. So, first thing I have to bring up, Darnell, is I have been able to talk to very few people that have actually ran the gauntlet in the last 10 years like you have.
Oh boy.
Starting off solely as an animator, making your way to Montreal to work as a 2D artist, design lead, and all kinds of character artist positions all throughout. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to bounce from so many cool roles all in such a short period of time?
Oh boy. um, Very chaotic. Is the first thing I can say. Uh, it's funny because it wasn't intentional to want to bounce between a lot of projects like this, but it kind of just evolved like that. I kept getting offered positions that I really wanted to pursue. I kept seeing opportunities to like, oh, I want to work on this so I can like build up this skill. And then eventually it went to, oh, I want to work at this place so I can build up the leadership skill, and eventually led to working and creating like a company. Uh, but yeah, I think the best word I can say for that is like chaotic. Very rewarding, but yeah, it was a lot of learning stuff on the fly. A lot of late nights teaching myself things to be able to like match the quality that my clients wanted. But honestly, I can't complain. It was yeah, it was fun.
Was there any like one particular role that you think that you took like the most out of? Is there something that you like remember fondly? Because obviously, like, yeah, you had like such a crazy track record of like small studios, big places like Snapchat, and some others, like kind of everything all in between. Was there one that you think back on fondly, even if it was for a short period of time, that you were like, that
Oh.
one, that's something that I'm really proud of, or was just like crazy to be able to work on?
So, this is not gaming related, but when I worked in
Doesn't need to be.
Montreal, I worked at a small company called Sardine Productions, and it was one of my first times getting to be a character designer on a really cool, snappy. Um, how do I describe it? It was very snappy, like animation, which is something that isn't done as much anymore, and it was a nice change of pace from the more rigid kids shows that I had done before. And I always think back to that experience really fondly. It wasn't even that big of like a project. I was only there for like 7 months roughly, but the team was really nice. The show was really cute. I got to learn a lot about like just doing raw character design, and I think back about that experience a lot. It
Is that what
was
you did? You always want to go into animation and character design? Was it just like,
yeah.
you were just drawing cartoons in class in high school instead of paying attention, things like that?
Oh yeah. Oh wow, like nailed it right on the head.
Feel
Um,
seen? Yeah.
yeah, I guess I was always an artsy kid growing up. I had doodle pads. I didn't really get my first sketchbook until like late high school, I guess, but I was always doodling in notebooks. I was the kid who always drew like elaborate things on the side of tests, like whenever a teacher would give you one, and then you're waiting to hand it in, and you just sketch stuff. It got to a point I remember where a teacher made a comment, not addressing anyone specifically, but said, "Don't draw on the side of the page anymore. We don't want to see that." And I
And you've
kind of
just drawn
figured
this
he
whole
was,
art.
yeah. But yeah, I was always like I was always doodling in class. I guess it's a really common artist thing where you can focus on something, but you need to be distracted with something else at the same time. I guess it's I'm describing ADHD, but but yeah, the yeah, that was me to a T. Always
No, that's
drawing. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. I think it's like it can be incredibly peaceful. Like I'm one of those people that I always have like lo-fi on in the background. It's just
Yeah,
like just having it doesn't matter what it is as long as there's no lyrics. For me, it's any words is what like pulls me. But if as
agreed.
long as there's something,
Agreed.
in the background, then it's creativity heaven, right? You
Yeah.
can actually focus on something. Um, so you mentioned like a bunch of different things, a bunch of different roles that you were kind of able to jump into. What was it that made you decide, you know what, video games is where I want to be? Did you start as a kid also playing video games and you're like, this is the
Oh.
industry I want to be in? Or did it go from I love art to, ooh, this industry is, I can really like establish myself and like use my skill set to its fullest?
So, um, a little bit of both. So my growing up, okay, how do I rephrase this? So I started video games fairly late compared to other kids, I guess. I didn't really get my first console until I was already a teenager.
Okay.
Um, and my brother and I, as soon as we got it, we were essentially like addicted. Like we would play video games constantly. Like it was our Saturday afternoons. We'd have friends over. We played stuff all the time. So it was something that I um, grew up with to an extent. But it wasn't something that I pursued as a career until actually I moved to Montreal. I had always wanted, my goal in life was always to get into animation, become a character designer, and then eventually I wanted to direct.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but when I was offered a job at a small startup in Montreal, they were like, "Oh, we need a character designer just to help out with some concepts for a game." I thought, "Oh, I mean, I know games need artists to be worked on, but I didn't really understand the full scope of what that entailed until I started working in the field and then realized this is amazing. It combines this like the stuff I love about animation in terms of like storytelling, character development, just really cool design. But now you get to interact with it as opposed to animation where you're mostly just consuming it. Um, and it was something cool that I was like, oh, I love that you can make a career out of this, and I would love to pursue it. Which is why I stayed in gaming for 5, 6 years before eventually coming back into animation and then going back into gaming again.
So you went to animation, you were like, you knew then that you were
Yeah,
like, I need to go back. Like this is
yeah,
something that I really want to do.
yeah.
Clearly, the fact that you've kind of created a home with Ocean Mouse, which I definitely want to jump into. Let's jump into it now. Why not?
Sure.
So Ocean Mouse Studios. It seems like you finally made yourself a home, right? Of jumping from job to job. Now it seems that you seem to be a little more solidified. You've
Mm.
built a team. I believe it was seven last I heard. Is seven
Yes.
still correct? So with a team like that, and you're working on your first official project, which I know we can't discuss today,
Yeah.
but hopefully we'll get to have you back when you are able to discuss it. What is it about running your own studio that makes the late nights and the stressful panic attacks all worthwhile?
Honestly, I think as creatives, not just in gaming but in animation, we're constantly striving to want to leave our mark on the industry. And I feel like having my own company or having a team that also has that same uh I guess goal, that's been one of the most rewarding experiences of it. Like getting together and then putting a pitch together, putting game design docs together, but also seeing how, oh, we're on the same page for this, or oh, how do we push this? And really getting to leave our mark on the industry with a project that we did from scratch. Um, I like that to me is like the driving force of the entire company. I wanted to leave my mark on the industry. I wanted to tell stories that reflected more of my experiences and my team's experiences. And with the project that we're currently developing, we get to do more of that. When you work in animation, well, I guess in gaming or any industry really, and you're working for somebody else, yes, you get to work on cool projects, but you're not working on a story or a project you made. Like you're working under a company, you're working under somebody else. So having Ocean Mouse was a way for my group to essentially be like, hey, we want to tell these kinds of stories. Why don't we focus on that and see if we can get that off the ground? And being able to work on that has been honestly like it's the reason I wake up in the morning. Like getting to
Wow.
just sit down. Like I have the docs for my project open in front of me right now, and getting to sit down and be like, oh, this is mine. Like I got to do this. Like is something that I know I hold really dearly about this whole experience.
That's incredible. It's yeah, definitely. I think we were discussing like that 10 years of like running the gauntlet that you
Yeah.
must have came up with the decision that you're like, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do this myself rather than constantly, especially because you were constantly answering to different people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like
Exactly.
learning the new managerial flow and like learning how each
Yep.
company runs. And you're like, I feel like you probably took a lot of lessons from different
Oh
places,
yeah.
good and bad.
100%. Oh
I
yeah.
really want to do this. I really don't want to do that. And kind of implement it all into like one place that you can call home, which is awesome.
Yeah. You are hitting all the nails on the head. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Been doing this for a while. So like what's one part of I really wish we could get into the games, but of course we're gonna have you back and I'm really looking forward to that. But one thing that is very apparent in a lot of Ontario studios that I get to talk to is the company culture, right? Like that I think that's used, it's just a buzzword, is used in a lot of different places,
Yep.
but then you see, especially from a lot of these great indie studios like yourselves, that you were able to kind of bring in a lot of the lessons that you've learned and help shape the culture from the jump. It's not, you're not retroactively trying to fix it, or you're not trying to
Mhm.
mitigate some other issues. You were able to kind of come in ground floor, clean slate, and say, okay, these are our rules. These are our guidelines to live by. This is what makes Ocean Mouse Ocean Mouse. It will makes you your identity. So what are some of the parts of the culture that you're incredibly proud of and that you guys work on, that you focus on and say this is important to us. This is part of what makes us the studio that we are today.
So this is a lot more internal, just because our public image is still, I
Oh,
guess, being
that's what I mean.
developed.
100%.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
internally, how do you guys conduct yourselves so in a way that you're proud of?
So we very much value open communication at the studio. And I know that's something that a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, we love communicating with the team. We love having like open dialogue. But I found that as the bigger you get as a company, the harder it gets to implement that. So
Mm,
right now, Ocean Mouse is at a point where we're still small enough where we can enforce everyone gets involved in the conversation, everyone's opinion gets heard. Obviously not everyone's opinion gets selected, but everyone has a voice at the company. It's never a case of, oh, I'm in charge, I'm going to make all the decisions and you guys just say yes. It's an open conversation, it's an open dialogue. We share ideas and we make sure that everybody is at least satisfied with decisions that are made before we go, okay, let's move on to the next step. And that's actually something that a lot of my employees or like teammates have said that they really value, because they don't get that at other jobs. But again, that is something that's a lot easier to do because we're smaller. So hopefully, if we get any bigger, we'll be able to keep that vibe going.
yeah,
But that's
100%.
something that I'm very proud of with the company. Just being able to have that open dialogue, voices are heard, and opinions matter with decisions made for the project or just the company in general.
And I think as long as it's something that you guys are building now, I think
Yeah,
it's a little bit easier to, continue to implement it as you add team members.
yeah,
Because the last thing you want is to not have those, ideals set in place. And then you hire up a bit when you get to the next project and you're at 20 people. And then that's when things can really
yeah,
the communication pipelines really start to crumble and some people can feel left out. So that's awesome that that's such a focus for you guys.
yeah. Very much.
Is there anything that you can discuss about Ocean Mouse when it comes to just the way that you plan out a project? So of course, like I know you guys are working on your first big project yourselves. You done some service work as well. But is there anything, I know with the culture, it's very much about open communication, but anything that you've learned in your experience as well as your team's experience of like kind of how to manage a project when it comes to pipelines and all of the other buzzwords that we could throw out? Is there anything that you use or any strategy that you like to put forward? It's a major thing. A lot of listeners jumping in, they really want to make their own studio,
Of course.
or ones that like Ontario is the biggest spot in Canada for micro studios for
Mhm.
4 people or less. We have such an entrepreneurial spirit around us, and it's awesome. It's really great to be able to see all these small studios. But a lot of people come in, I want to make a game rather than I want to make a company. You seem
Yeah.
to have learned that beforehand, and you're coming in with both in mind. So, what is one thing that you use, that you practice, that is going to be able to, evolve and continue on as you get more and more projects and as you continue to grow as a company?
Well, I just want to say first off, when we did start the company, it was very much a learning process of getting to that point of, oh, we have to make a company, not just a game.
Yep.
Because like most people who get into this industry, like you mentioned, that's not the thought process at the beginning. But very early on, thankfully, we realized, oh, we can't just be focusing on one project at a time. We need to be aware that this is a company that we have to keep going for as long as possible. We can't just be thinking one project at a time. We need to be thinking, how does this lead to the next project? How does this grow our company? How does this grow our culture? Um, but yeah, it was we kind of learned that the hard way, because as we started to talk to other people in the industry, we were like, they asked us this question, like, okay, well, how does your company, where do you see your company being in 5 years? And we're thinking, oh, but we just want to make a game. I guess we have to think about this. But thankfully, it was not like, it wasn't an issue, because we hadn't started pitching for stuff yet. But we did learn that, like, in the process of like establishing the company at first. And also, can you repeat the question, because I answered one part of it but not the other part?
And then I continued on and made two
Yeah.
questions. I also have a problem with doing that. So is there something that you implement, or a rule or a style of production or strategy, like when it comes to like the pipeline? I know you mentioned
Yeah.
open communication, but is there anything that you guys value or you use that it's like, this is how we're going to be able to manage projects across departments or something when you guys continue to grow?
Oh, that's a broad question. Um, I guess in terms of kind of going in parallels with open communication, one of the things that we want to do whenever we establish a project is, I want to make sure that everybody has access to all of the materials and tools that we are using to set up the project. So everyone is able to see, okay, well, this is what we're thinking for game design. This is what we're thinking for story. Even if they're not involved in that step of the process, it's something that they're all in. It's information that's all available to them, so that when we come into meetings and we start to move through the project, everybody is on the same page, even if it's not their department. So everyone on the team is always aware of what's going on with marketing. Everyone on the team is aware of what's going on with story, even though the animators might not be involved in story as much because they're focusing on art and animation. Um, it's stuff that we try to keep available so that everybody's always on the same page, and it's just essentially up to you, like the team members, to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna inform myself on this part, so when I come into a meeting, I know exactly like what's going on. um, and we can essentially breeze through issues and obstacles very easily because everybody's aware of what's going on with the project at all times.
I think that's a massive thing. I don't even know if you realize how big of a deal that is, from like the amount of studios like I've had a chance to talk to, not on the podcast, but like just in person.
Yeah.
Of like, that is such a big thing that it is really going to be able to help you in the future of not having people feel isolated, right?
Exactly,
When
that's
there's like
actually a
four of
really
you
yeah.
dealing with a big issue, and then you have your animator on the side that's like, oh, okay, they're not entirely sure what's going on, or they don't have any input themselves just because they're not in that department. You guys seem to be very open doors. Get in here. Let's figure this out together. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this together. Even if like sometimes it can be better for you, even having that one person that's kind of, outside of it, to see it from that
Yeah,
perspective.
actually, that's a very good point. It's also very nice to bring in people. Like sometimes I'll have my marketing director come in and just take a look at the state of the project, and having somebody who hasn't been involved in the game design itself, getting an opinion from them is very enlightening. And then at the same time, it lets them be aware of what's going on with the state of the project. And I do want to reiterate that this is a lot easier to do with a smaller company, because I've done it with
Yes.
bigger companies and it becomes chaos.
It's just long,
Yeah.
long meetings.
Yeah.
It feels like we haven't gotten anywhere. But like
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's the attempt at open communication. But it's so hard to implement when you have like,
yeah,
15, 20 people and above these big studios here in Ontario, hundreds of people. It's like it's a true like testament to like the ideals of the management team that have been implemented to make sure that that communication stays open no matter how big the studio gets.
yeah.
So it's awesome to hear that that's like clearly something that's really important to you in your studio. Um, so one thing I do like to bring up, especially with people that I know are avid gamers, what are you currently playing right now? I know we always try to focus on
Ooh.
Ontario. The Lodge is an Ontario-based podcast. I want to make sure that our audience is always intrigued by that, but we get our inspiration from other studios. We
Yeah.
get our inspiration and like passion for video games in general from all over the place. So I definitely want to talk to you. What are you playing right now? What's in your Switch? What's in your PlayStation, Xbox, whatever you're using right now? What is the thing that has gotten you up at night?
I'm currently obsessed with Wild Hearts. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I'm a diehard Monster Hunter World fan, and I have downloaded Wild Hearts. It is on my list.
Okay, I will highly recommend it because I'm also a diehard Monster Hunter fan, but not just World. Like I've played all of them.
My one of my best friends is the same way. He's the one who got me into World. World was my 400 hours, and then
Yep.
Rise
Yeah. There
I
you go.
might get
There you
to it.
go.
I'm waiting on World 2 if that ever comes. But yes.
Yeah, so I'm currently playing Wild Hearts, and it's a very fresh take for those of you who are not familiar. It's a fresh take on the monster hunting formula. EA is the no, Koei Tecmo is the developer, and EA is the publisher, if I remember correctly.
I believe so, yeah.
And it's kind of a weird mix of like Fortnite building with monster hunting.
Which is what turned me off of it. Was the Fortnite building, I need to get hands-on, obviously.
Yeah,
I like that they have the demo out, and I can't speak to it until I've played it,
of
but
course.
that's what kinda originally threw me off, was, like, that's why I never got into Fortnite. I just wasn't a fan of the building, it
Oh
just
yeah,
wasn't for me.
yeah.
So with this, like, how is that implemented? Is it implemented in, like, a fun and cool way that you feel like it's added to the Monster Hunter formula?
Uh, 100%. So the game is still. I feel like there's a couple of bugs that they need to work out, but the developers have been very vocal about making sure that things are working in top shape. They released a huge patch not long ago that fixed a lot of issues, and that was actually my main deterrent originally when I heard about the game. I was like, oh, how am I gonna build mid fight? How am I gonna keep track of structures? But they do a really good job of making it feel seamless. Like your building is essentially just one button, and you map it to different face buttons on your controller. So in the middle of a combo, you can just hit the button, build something, and it becomes part of your combo. It's very nice and
Oh,
smooth. Yeah.
damn.
Um,
Okay.
it does take some getting used to because as a Monster Hunter player, I'm not used to having a structure help me with anything. It's just
Yeah.
my weapon and whatever skills I need for the hunt. But with this, they do a good job of integrating the structure building, the resource management, and the hunting all in one fight very well. I definitely recommend it. This game is getting dunked on right now because the PC version is terrible. But if you're playing on console, it's very fun.
I'm much more of a console person anyways, so I think that works out. And yeah, I think there's a free demo or a free trial, right?
Yeah.
With
Yeah, 10 hours. I feel like
yeah.
I'm promoting the game, like 10 hours on EA.
I know, it's trying out. But no, that's good to know because honestly, like I have a couple friends, yeah, that are like diehard Monster Hunter, and they haven't jumped into it. And I need someone that is a huge Monster Hunter fan to pitch it to me because
Oh,
that's my hesitation with it. Is I loved World so much, but I am hesitant when it comes to the building. That's good to know that it's
yeah.
simple and it's integrated because that sounds and it looks fantastic.
It's it's absolutely gorgeous. The monster designs are really good. The soundtrack is I don't want to like shoot any shots, but I do prefer the soundtrack of this one more than the Monster Hunter soundtrack.
Wow,
Um,
that's a statement.
yeah, but keep in mind that I am a fan of both. For anyone watching, I
Um,
have like 1700 hours on one of the PSP titles, so I'm by no means like not a fan. But the soundtrack of Wild Hearts, they did a really good job, and it's stuck with me a bit more than the soundtrack of Monster Hunter up till now. But it
cool.
probably is because I've heard the soundtrack of Monster Hunter for so long. Like the themes of the monsters are the same, like for the most
Yes.
part. So
Yeah. And for me, it's just like I remember hearing the trailer because like I had watched the trailers for the ones before, and I was really
yeah.
excited for the next one. Whatever one was going to come to console, I was that person. And then as soon as yeah, the trailer for Monster Hunter World, we were sitting beside like one of my best friends, Doug, shout out, and his reaction, like he heard the first note and was just like on his feet. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, like this is a big deal. And like I obviously ended up getting into it after, but like I think music is something that is so like underappreciated sometimes, depending
100%.
on what type of gamer you might be. Which actually leads me into I wanted to make a comment that we actually ran an event in December, the IO Connect, about the future of video game audio,
Mhm.
right? With CD Project Red and Supergiant Games
Yep.
and Keyword Studios, and you were there,
It
and there
was. Yeah.
was a great announcement that I didn't even get to talk to you while you were there, but I got to see you on stage for a moment,
Oh, right. The Xbox.
which was wild. I'm
It
really
was
happy to see it go to you.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness. It was fantastic. So funny story. I actually didn't even get to be there for the announcement of me winning. I had just left like 5 minutes
Oh yeah.
before,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
one of my close friends who was the one who essentially her company gave out the Xbox was the one to message me like literally while I was on the subway being like, "Hey, you won this. You need to come back." And I was like, I can't. I'm home already." But I like essentially ended up contacting everybody like the people from IO just to like make sure that I
Mhm.
to say thank you and everything. But yeah, that event was fantastic. Like I was so impressed with just uh, I guess the quality of everything. Like I'm I didn't really know coming in like what to expect, but like everybody was so cool. I got to meet so many people from Interactive Ontario, and then winning the Xbox at the end of the night was like the cherry topper.
That was awesome because yeah, I was hearing your name get announced. I was like, "That's awesome!" Like,
Yeah.
good, good, good. But yeah, we've got another one coming up. This is the Lodge podcast, but I'm pitching Interactive Ontario right now. But we've got the next IO Connect is actually coming up in April
Nice.
at XP.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get to see everybody there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing I did want to just go back to when we're talking about like the games that you're playing, does your experience working in animation and working in character design, does that enrich or does that kind of deter from your enjoyment of certain games? Like now that you get to see the matrix in a way, or you get
Yeah.
to see how some of these things are built, do you think you get more from it? That you're like, oh wow, that's wildly impressive? Or do you think that some things that I may not notice are driving you insane?
um. Oh man, that's a big question because I it did for a bit, but I had to learn to kind of turn that part of my brain off, or else I would never enjoy anything. It definitely comes up more with animated content where I'll look at an animation piece and be like, why did they design it like this? This just looks really hard to animate. Or um, like I'll see how a character is built. I don't know if you're familiar, but in 2D animation, oftentimes it's not fully hand drawn. They'll use a rig. And sometimes I'll be able to see like, oh, why did they build the rig like this? It looks weird. Um, so to an extent it did, but not as much lately. I try to be a lot more open-minded when I play a video game. Like if the presentation of the game appeals to me, then I'll play it even if little things about like a character design or the way something is put together isn't quite right. Um, just because if I start to look at everything with that critical eye, then you just never enjoy anything.
That's always the worry, and I've definitely talked to a few people about that as well. That it's like they get sometimes they get much more of an appreciation for something that
Yeah,
the regular person might not notice, or it's that you see something that you're like, this is why did they do it this way when
yeah.
your regular person would just not even notice. Is there something that you find impressive when you see like a lot of especially a lot of like anime games, right?
Mhm.
That you have these traditionally 2D characters and 2D worlds brought into a 3D space. Is there any one that you remember that you can see that you're like, I can't believe they did it that well? Like
Hmm.
being able to actually implement that. You looking at like, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and like Fairy Tale and like things like that, that it's like they managed to kind of pull that off without giving you that weird like uncanny valley feeling.
Actually, you mentioning Dragon Ball made me totally give me my answer. So, I'm a big fighting game player. I love anything that's like competitive fighter. Like I play Guilty Gear, Super Smash Brothers.
Nice.
I got into DNF Duel recently, and I'm very impressed with the Arc Systems work ability to make anime 2D characters feel like 3D fighting characters, if that makes
The
sense.
Dragon Ball Z fighters, right?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, that's the engine that they use for essentially all of their fighting games. Just that 2D cell shaded animated look, but translated into 3D. And then the camera work that they use to trick you into thinking that things are a lot more dynamic than they are because it's still like a 3D model, and how they push certain parts of the character during dramatic moments, that blows my mind. Like I absolutely love all of that, like
That's a
that aspect.
right there. That's something that with your experience that you can see something that I'm like, oh, that
Yeah,
looks beautiful. And you're like,
yeah,
no, that's crazy.
yeah. It's
Like
really
that they were
cool.
able to do something like that and implement it so smoothly and still sort of like true to the source material, which is always important as always.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you've been playing right now? Is there anything besides Wild Hearts that
Oh,
you're looking at for inspiration? Or you're looking at for that you're like, ooh, this is really cool. I kind of want to steal, this art style, or I kind of want to like I'm inspired or influenced by, this person.
oh, okay, yeah. So whenever we do game design for anything, I try to play as many different titles in that genre, just to get a feel for how a certain company did certain things.
Maybe you don't need to
So
be too specific then, because I know you guys haven't announced a
yeah.
genre yet. I'm aware of
um,
that.
but even then, like I'm still playing like a plethora of games that are not that genre, just because there might be some elements of it that I like. Like currently, I'm playing Potionomics, which is an adorable little shopkeeper game, with a very heavy with a very heavy lean towards narrative. So it's a story-driven shopkeeper game, which I like. And I just like the way that they matched the art style. It feels very Blizzard but cute, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm playing that right now. I'm also playing Katamari Damacy. I
Nice.
it's like
Nice.
there's so many things about that game that I
Pull the
love,
pull.
and I hadn't played it in a long time. So when the Steam version got on sale, I bought it for the Steam Deck, and I've been playing that and just enjoying it all over again. And then seeing how like they put a few levels together, like a lot of the hidden details in that game are like really well done. So that I'm playing a lot, and I just recently finished Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so that
I'm a
was
big
something that
Pokemon fan. I saw your I'm always gonna forget the name because I don't remember these Pokemon anymore. Cyndaquil's, Quilava. What's the
oh
third one?
yeah, Typhlosion.
Typhlosion. Thank you. I saw that on your Instagram. That was like, that's amazing. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah. So I just finished playing Scarlet and Violet, and I play competitive Pokemon. I mean, not as much now because I'm too busy with like the project, but I'm like an avid competitive Pokemon player, so that was really something that I like dove into. Um,
Whoa.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Like that's a good reaction because when I tell people, "Oh yeah, I play Pokemon competitively," they're like, "What? How do you do that?"
Like,
But
that's awesome.
yeah,
Like,
it's fun.
yeah. It must be a nice for you that you like working in an industry that any person that you say that to, they're like, that's cool, instead of like, wait, what?
Yeah,
Uh,
I've had a couple of people who work in the industry be like, "I didn't know there was competitive Pokemon." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's been going on for decades."
Yeah, there's competitive most things, and especially when you have a
Yeah,
franchise as gigantic as
yeah,
Pokemon, you better believe there's some competition there. That's
yeah.
awesome. Good.
Oh, but yeah, so I just finished playing Pokemon. What else did I play? Oh, Ooblets was one of my.
Good
Oh my
call.
god, that was like my favorite game of last year. I played so many hours of that. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a cozy Pokemon like game where you're collecting creatures and like battling them, but it's a lot more casual. There's no PvP or anything. So I went into it because I'd been following the developers for years, and I loved the art style, and I thought they were just like they gave off really good vibes. And funny enough, I'm not a like I haven't played that many cozy games, but this one I got into so much that I was like, I love cozy games now.
Well, it scratches a different part of your
Yeah,
brain, right? Where
yeah,
you're like, you use so much of your creative energy throughout the day working at a studio like that,
yeah,
that it's like, this is something that you can still breathe and relax and not
yeah.
be so, not 100% of your brain power is going into
Exactly.
it, and you're able to just to feel, yeah, cozy, which is
But
awesome.
it still hits a lot of like the gamer points where it's like, oh, I feel like I accomplished something in
Those
game, or I
dopamine spikes.
yeah, the
Yeah.
dopamine spike. There you go. Yeah. Like like essentially like all gamers where you want to complete something or you want to hit a goal in a game, even though there's no like the pacing is very slow. I feel like every time I play it, it's like, oh, okay, I got the town to this level. Oh, I got my ooblet to this level. And I know it's very like basic gamer like
No.
logic, but I don't know. I really got into it and I played like I must have played like hundreds of hours of that game. Oh my god.
That's awesome. I
It was
think is
really
like I love those kind of games. I always like having like a game like that on the go, and that's why I'll always have a Switch. No matter what, it's just to have that. It might be bad. You mentioned before, like it feels like we're kind of describing ADHD,
yeah.
but it's like having on, like a show that I've seen before in the background and like playing something on my Switch
Yep,
or like the Steam
yep,
Deck. And it's like there's something that's very relaxing about doing something
yeah,
like that where you're not 100% focused on one thing, which again is probably encouraging that multitasking brain that isn't exactly good for us, but it's
yeah,
relaxing.
yeah.
So one thing I do want to bring up too is, of course, this being an Ontario podcast, I always have to ask. So you worked in Ontario, and I know you were in Montreal for a while, and you came back. with Ocean Mouse being in Toronto.
Mhm.
What is it about the Ontario video game industry that you think makes it something special, something that you enjoy being a part of?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk about that for hours.
Well, that's good to hear.
Um, yeah, to be honest, I felt so the Montreal industry has been established for like a long time, and
Mhm.
even though it's like when you think gaming in Canada, I do think a lot of people's defaults is to go to Montreal, and not a lot of people realize that Ontario is also like a great gaming hub. But I feel like Ontario just supports indie a bit better. Montreal is very much about um it felt like a lot more established studios were getting more opportunities to experiment, which is great. You have a studio like Ubisoft or a smaller studio. What am I? The name escapes me. But you have smaller studios that get government support to, hey, let's try a new idea, or oh, hey, let's like push this further. Whereas Ontario is very good about fostering new talent, and that's something that I valued a lot, especially when we went from working in Montreal to working here and then trying to get into the indie space here. Everyone is just so welcoming and supportive. It's like very cool and different.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's something obviously we try to foster, but I always like hearing it from people like you. But yeah, that's something that obviously like, we're very proud of in Ontario, and something that I think everyone together as a community continues to like strive for
Yeah.
is that newer studios coming in. It's like they're open doors. Like
Yes.
come in, you are going to have people with no egos. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, and that's something that like I wasn't necessarily expecting when I first like came into the industry in Ontario. Is you see so many people that have been doing it for 20 years that
Yeah.
are so happy to help someone that's been in it for
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
With even some to them, that's something they've done 100 million times, filling out the CMF form or doing
Yeah.
their taxes or insurance or whatever it might be on the business side. That a lot of studios coming in, they have a game, like we mentioned, they have a project, but the business side was like, oh shit, like what can I do here? That you see so many people in the industry like, yep, call me, set up a meeting, we'll talk, I'll help you out with this, help you out with that. And it's just like such a fun thing to be able to watch. And then you
Oh my
see
God.
6 months later the collaborations of like a lot of them are service companies. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, we need you. You know who you're going to call. You're going to call that
Yeah.
studio that is, just starting out or are really engaged with the community. And that's always fun to get to see all those people.
And yeah, again, you hit the nail right on the head. Because that's essentially what happened with us. I had expressed interest in starting a company, and I'm not. I imagine you know them, but do you know the people who run Alien Trap?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lee's actually coming to the GDC booth that we're running for Ontario
Oh,
Trades.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
I'm friends with Jesse from college.
We actually had them on the podcast not too long ago, Jesse and Lee. Yeah, that was like I think 2 or 3 episodes ago.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check
Yeah,
them
they're
out. Oh
awesome.
my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're fantastic. But when I expressed interest in starting a company without even really bringing it up, they were just like, "Here, all these resources. Here,
Yeah.
like if you have any questions, like." And it was just such a nice and comforting way to start a business, I guess.
That you're like,
Um,
"Whoa."
I had an idea of like, obviously, like I mentioned before, we knew we wanted to make a game, but we didn't know how to. We weren't focusing on making the company, but with their help, we managed to shift our thought process to more. Oh yeah, we need to build it more like a company, and it was just essentially because they gave us the help and support, just of the goodness of their hearts. Like if they're listening to this, you guys are awesome, by the way.
They are. There.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to send this out to them.
Yeah, yeah,
But no, yeah, they're a fantastic studio. But yeah, that just speaks to exactly what we had already been discussing. That there's so many people like that are like, oh yeah, here's the years of knowledge and experience and the ups and downs I had to go through. Here's all the lessons so that
yeah,
you don't have to do that.
yeah.
It's like that's so fun to be able to see that and just like, yep, anything you need, give me a call. And like it's not, one or two studios and it's not like the anomaly, it's not a rare occurrence. It's
Yeah,
there's so many talented veterans in Ontario that are those people that are, open to helping and oh, you have any questions? It's one of the reasons why we have like the IO Discord that it's like, hey, how do I do this? And there's 6 people being like,
yeah,
oh, I know that drove me
yeah.
nuts last year. This is how we fixed it. This is how we figured it out.
I
This is who
I
you can call. And it's like,
I love reading through the IO Discord and just seeing everybody's like if I have a question about something, usually I can search the Discord and somebody will have brought it up and
yeah.
then like 50 answers will be posted to it. It's like, "Oh my gosh, like this resource is invaluable."
Which is so funny, the people that are just like, "Oh, I know." Like you don't realize, like, especially like as a business, like I'm sure there's many times where you're like dealing with an issue that you're like, "I wonder if anyone else has had to deal with this before."
Definitely.
And you go in and there's 50 responses being
Yep.
like, "Oh, I know, right? Yeah, this,
Yep.
that," and like all these responses, you're like, "Oh, I'm not alone." Like there's so many people that are dealing with this issue or how to fill out that form or this form, and it's like,
Yep.
"Yep, like we've been through this many times." Like
No, it's a great community. It's a great resource. Yeah.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things. So is there anything about the community or anything that's coming up that you're looking forward to? Because now that we're slowly getting back to in-person events,
Mhm.
like we mentioned the IO Connect being in December. I know we have like XP Game Developer Summit coming up. Is there anything that you're in particular looking forward to of kind of getting out there and getting to see a lot of these people? Because
Um,
most of the time you've been in a studio, it's been working from home.
Pandemic. Yeah,
Yeah.
we incorporated in the pandemic. Uh, Most of our operations were remote. Funny enough, we had plans on getting a workspace pre-pandemic, and we essentially realized we didn't really need it.
Mhm.
So we're probably going to be staying working from home for the time being. But yeah, for future events, I mean, I'm very excited about XP Summit, to be honest. We attended for the first time last year, and it was such a treasure trove of information and meeting people and connecting with like industry higher ups, and like I've met so many people that I'm still talking to right now that um like will update me on like the random status of their project, and it's like, oh, it's so great that you like want to keep in touch and everything. Like, I love it. There's XP Summit. I don't know if they're still doing it, but before the pandemic, TCAF had a gaming section for indie games. And if they're bringing that back this year, I would love to attend that as well. It was a great way to like meet other indie developers, play demos, and just see a bit more of like the grassroots, uh, like smaller studios, like get a chance to shine. I actually played a really fun game there the last time I was there, and I still think about it today. It was called Bravery Network Online, promoting for them.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
they were that was a really fun game. Actually, I played that not too long ago on my Steam Deck, just because I was nostalgic for it, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna get back into this for a bit.
So fun
Um,
to play local sometimes.
yeah,
It's like
it really
it's
is.
such a different thing when you get really involved in the community and you're like, "This feels good."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah.
There's that one. We did want to attend GDC, but just things didn't line up for us, so we're probably going to be going next year. But that's something I'm already looking forward to. Uh, but yeah, in terms of events,
We got Toronto Games Week is coming up in June. There's going
oh,
to be
that's right. Okay,
a lot more details coming out
right,
about that
right.
over the next few weeks. IO is going to be a part of it as well. But yeah, there's
Nice.
a lot of great companies, a lot of exciting things coming. That'll be the first week of June.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone, stay tuned to that. Check out the website. We're going to be announcing something really fun. I'm very, very excited to get involved and to share some more details. I'll definitely be shouting out to you. I feel like it's something you might be interested in.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'm
Sounds
really looking
fun.
forward to that. But yeah, being able to do XP and like same with me, like I started working at IO in 2020.
Mhm.
So it's very, very much the same thing. I always work from home. I'm out of Ottawa,
Oh,
and like
okay.
I didn't get to meet the team for the first year, right? Because we just couldn't.
Yeah.
And then now we're finally getting to that point where all these studios and all these amazing people I've been able to work with and talk with all these studios for years now. I'm finally able to meet them for the first time.
Nice.
So yeah, XP should be really exciting. Any IO members, make sure to reach out. Discount code. And then yeah, we have the IO Connect. We have the big like
Yeah.
after party, as it were, the networking event that we're doing on the first night on the 20th. So that's going to be really exciting too, and hopefully I get to see you there.
We do have plans to attend. I gotta check. Like, I have somebody else do scheduling right now, so I just have to like make sure everything is set up. But I do
We'll
believe we
talk.
are planning on attending that.
We'll talk. I'll make sure of it. Um, but yeah, so I think honestly that'll probably about do it for the Lodge podcast, episode 15. Darnell, are there any final words? Anything else that you want to let the people know that you got going on in your life?
Oh boy. Uh, Play Wild Hearts. No, I'm kidding. No, honestly, all I can say is thank you for having me on the podcast. Honestly, Interactive Ontario has been doing such good work with getting people on the right lane for developing their projects and just navigating the indie field. And to be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that we had joined, I feel like we'd be in a very different place right now. Like, just to shout your praises a little bit. Um, so yeah, the fact that you have like podcasts like this, just information sessions, the indie super boosts have been super fun. Yeah, just I guess I just want to say keep up the good work on your end. This has been great.
Thanks, man. That was very necessary, and I greatly appreciate it. Though I'll let the team know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh wait,
So
sorry,
thank you,
Mike.
everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, one sec. The I think the dog realized I was talking about him earlier. He just came up. So
Yes,
here you go.
there he is.
This is Winston. This is my little baby boy.
Natalie, our producer, I know is losing her mind. I know it. Oh
Yeah,
my god,
he's a handful, but he's
he's
great.
adorable. Big fan of corgis. So yeah, so again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We always appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you to Ontario Creates for your continued support of thelodge.com. Like I mentioned, shout out to Natalie on the ones and twos, always making sure we look good. And honestly, Darnell, a big thank you to you. I know how busy you are, especially running an independent studio like this. You guys are obviously hard at work, heads down, and I know taking an hour or two out of your day to come and join us is no easy task. So I really appreciate you coming through and offering your advice and your experience and sharing it with our audience.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you so much for having us. Like, I mean, well, for having me. I extended the invite to the rest of my team, and they were like, "I'm too nervous to be on a podcast." But thank you so much for the invite. It was so like I love being able to share our experience with everybody, and just being able to show people that in like making a company does have a lot of steps, but like if you know where to look, like you can achieve it as well. So
yeah,
outlets like this are what's getting the word out there. So appreciate being invited on.
hell yeah. We're happy to have you guys. So everyone make sure to go follow Ocean Mouse Studio on Twitter. Check out Lil Darney on Instagram and Twitter as well. Check out all the amazing art that he's doing right now. It's honestly out of control. I rarely use Instagram and I'm back on it. I've re-downloaded it to make sure I'm checking out all your stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I know you guys got a lot of great things to come, some big announcements coming up. So everyone, yeah, make sure to tune in and stay on top of that. Obviously, check out thelodge.com and we'll have all the latest info as soon as we get it ourselves. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of the Lodge Podcast. But if we don't see you then, hopefully we will get to see you at GDC 2023. Interactive Ontario will be running Ontario Creates booth at the event. So make sure to come by, say hi. If you're out that way on the West Coast. If not, then we'll see you on the next one. And everybody, take care.